Hi everyone, just want to front load and say this video has a content warning. Scenes from scary movies tend to be scary, disturbing, and even sometimes gory. In addition to that, they contain spoilers for all the films I'm going to talk about. So heads up on all that stuff, and happy Halloween. Throughout my last video, I discuss anticipation and how it is a key element in any sort of successful horror movie. On a more granular level, that anticipation is an even more important element in each individual scare found inside those horror movies. Like I mentioned, the worst part is never the release that happens when Michael Myers jumps out of the closet or when the monster drops in behind our unsuspecting character. The worst, most dreadful part for the viewer is those agonizingly long, drawn out moments leading up to that shrill pitch of the violin to get the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up. Those moments where you know something is coming, but all you can do is wait for it to arrive. Those. See, now hopefully you remember that opening bit just a little more. And maybe you're a bit more on edge because you don't know what I'll be doing next. As an apology, let me tell you what I'm doing next. Due to the fact that I couldn't decide what movie I really wanted to make my Halloween finale on, I've decided to not decide. At the port of indecision, I have carved my own path and instead chosen to do something more unique. Instead of reviewing a movie, I'll analyze some scenes from various movies. I'll show you what they all have in common and what makes them standout moments in each of their respective films. Here's our lineup of frights, aka the movies whose scenes I'll be breaking down to tell you why they work. These are just some scares and tense moments that stick out to me in my short career as a guy who watches movies. Either they're famous or I think they should be. Over the next several minutes, I'll be talking about the defibrillator scene in The Thing, the astral plane in Insidious, the final possession in Hereditary, and finally the hostage house in Annihilation. First up, one of the oldest and probably most well known films, we have The Thing. Though just one of many standout scenes in the movie, the defibrillator scare is probably the clearest possible instance of setup, anticipation, build up, and payoff. To start off, information we already know outside of the scene is that the Thing has likely possessed one or more of the members of the US outpost in Antarctica. So outside of McGreedy, who we sort of latch onto as our protagonist, we have no idea who's worthy of trust. Everyone's a potential threat until they're burned to a crisp. With everyone turning on each other and tensions rising, stress is breaking these men down. Norris, under this tremendous pressure, has a heart attack and requires resuscitation. You can see the very same heart condition set up a few times beforehand as he struggles with the door and ends up clutching at his shirt. But ever suspicious, we as the viewers are wondering, is Norris truly having a heart attack, or does he feel himself being consumed by the Thing in these moments? We don't know, and we can only assume the worst. Now it's time to try to save Norris. In the event that he is in fact human, his colleagues cannot just let him die. Copper performs CPR on Norris, coming into contact with him again and again and again. We know direct contact is how the Thing spreads, how it infects, and how it consumes. Each second Copper lays his hands on the bare chest of Norris, this nagging feeling inside of us grows. The anticipation that something terrible is about to happen builds and builds. The rule of threes is played upon, twisted to work against the viewer. A pattern is established. Preparation, contact, rest. Preparation, contact, rest. Preparation, contact, impact. Even if you've seen the film before, there's this disgusting feeling of knowing what's coming that stays with you far more than what is eventually shown on screen. Your imagination and anticipation, your dread, create something far more terrifying and lasting than anything that could ever be put to film. John Carpenter knows this and abuses it to such an effective degree. He does it again and again, not with something outright frightening like a jump scare, but with these moments where you know the momentum of the film is taking the characters straight into a situation you wish more than anything they could just avoid. But they can't, and that inescapable feeling just sits in you like a rock. A bottomless pit, a realm where you know nothing good waits. Moving along to our next scare, this one from Insidious, it's not one of the most remarkable moments of the film, but it is one that has always stuck with me. It feels undersold and for that, all the more effective. However, it cannot take credit for being my favorite scare of the film. That belongs to something else. Someone else. Late in the movie, Josh travels to the astral plane to try to save his son Dalton from possession. He travels to the lair of the beast to rescue his child and must pass through many haunting obstacles in his path. The astral plane is unfamiliar, unwelcoming, and disturbing. It just feels off, and James Wan does an amazing job in creating this atmosphere that only emphasizes all of the fear and discomfort that he has brought on us up to this point. This realm is full of indifference, cruelty, and almost ignorance towards Josh, and it creates a unique type of fear, the kind where you've no idea what to even expect. It's a very minor moment, but one that illustrates the core premise behind a good scare just as well. Here, Josh comes upon his family, where in the astral plane it is paramount he is to blend in. This family, clearly long dead, is just disturbing. They're not outright horrifying. Nothing is about them, really. But our minds race with the possibility of what they could do, of what could happen to Josh if they came after him, if they so much as notice him. These ghosts of the past seem to latch onto him for just a moment, not doing anything, not harming him in any real way, but they make the viewer and Josh aware of just how things can go from bad to worse. How even the more normal of the paranormal are a moment's notice from turning on Josh and putting him through hell. This anticipation of what this family or any other entity in the astral plane could do carries us through the climax of the film with fear, apprehension, and a nagging feeling that something or someone is a second away from, well, their worst nightmare come to life, coming back to haunt them. Now, a more modern entry into my compendium of creepiness, Hereditary. Here we're taking a look at the climax of the film. For context, leading up to this moment, Peter and his mother Annie have been having a falling out, to put it lightly. And on top of that, Annie has recently discovered her family is involved in witchcraft, demon worship, and, well, pretty much a bunch of other no good stuff. She tries to cut ties with it all, but being that this is a horror movie, it doesn't go so well. Now we have a possessed mom stalking about her house, a half conscious son who she deeply hates, and on top of that, it's dark out. Peter creeps through his house, afraid of what he might uncover, and we're watching every single nook and cranny of the estate, every dark hallway that Annie might be lurking in. Each movement of the camera serves not only to highlight Peter as he makes his way to the living room, but also to show us just enough of the geography of the home to make us wonder where Annie might be lurking, yet far too little to give us any true idea. Wherever Peter looks, we anticipate safety. Wherever and whatever he's oblivious to, we have our fear drawn to those spots. Those little creeping rays of light serve not to provide safety, but to accent the danger, to highlight the tiniest of movements, provide silhouettes for haunting shapes you're afraid will stalk about the background. And finally, we see it. We see Annie stalking above Peter, waiting to strike. She's fully something else at this point, no longer a mother, but a monster. Hunting. Peter, still oblivious, is moments away from the terror we're already experiencing as the viewer, anxious of what could possibly come to him in these next seconds. And then it arrives, this occult man in the darkness, disturbing Peter and drawing us away from the threat of Annie, giving us a moment of a new scare, but more importantly, a distraction from the true threat to keep us in an agonizing anticipation once more. A chase begins and we experience a new sort of anxiety, praying that Peter is able to make an escape. Then he winds up trapped in the attic. A place we hear, a place we see, is not at all representative of any kind of safety. Our anticipation once more begins to build as this fresh fear is thrown on us. What is in this attic? What has Peter uncovered? Become trapped inside of? Baited into? It's made all the worse by Annie's completely demonic behavior outside the room, too. And for a while, we just get glimpses. Flies, dustings on the ground, candles indicating some sort of ritual or seance. Something sinister is in this room and Peter is trapped with it. But where is it coming from? When will it strike? As Peter tries to wake himself, believing himself to be in a dream, we are met with a sickening, wet slice, and another, and then another. And as Peter looks up, we see this new monstrosity that awaits him. Annie, somehow in the attic, mutilating herself in front of her son, desecrating herself in the same way she believes Peter desecrated his sister Charlie. No jump scares, just a clear picture of the disgusting, terrible reality of this attic. And it's too much to bear, not because of something that caught us by surprise or an entity that we never even saw coming, but because of all that we imagined, all that we were slowly fed bit by bit, piece by terrifying piece. And when it all comes together and melds into one, it feels not of this earth. Now, Annihilation inside the Shimmer, we find ourselves in another place not of this earth, where the familiar is melded together and morphed into one, creatures combined and warped with one another. We've seen it with what used to be deer. We've seen it with previous expedition teams. We've even seen it with crocodiles and sharks. So when Lena awakens, finding herself held captive by Anya, we are immediately put on guard. Every extra second spent inside the Shimmer is further guarantee of mutation, distortion, and corruption. Corrosion of these characters we're on this journey with. It's not pure horror, but this ticking clock already gives us something built into the narrative that we're on edge about. Add on to that the fact that one of the squad mates, Cass, was eaten alive by some sort of mutant bear just before this scene, and things are even more stressful for us. We know this killer bear, this monster, is lurking nearby. We know it's been exposed to one of the group, and we know it's had a chance to mutate once again because of this. So when Anya is losing it completely on edge, and we hear the scream, we hear Cass cry out, "Help me," our stomach drops, because we know that that's not Cass. It's not something we see. We don't see anything. There's no pop up to freak us out or to put us on the edge of our seats or have us cower under our blankets. All that it took to make us worry and to make us afraid about what happens next was two words: help me. Anya runs out, the only one capable of defending them, and she just doesn't come back. So when that bear wanders in, slow, steady, methodical, the anticipation just builds. The dread feels heavier with each footstep against the floorboards that this bear takes, as it inches closer and closer to Lena and her squad mates. We're as petrified as they are of what it might do to them. At any second, it could snap them into pieces with its bony and bloody jaw, and we can do nothing but observe. And right in their ears, it emits its mutated growl once more, the plea of their friend, devoured, absorbed, and corrupted into a siren song for all of them. And then this bear slowly, agonizingly bites down on Josie as she's completely defenseless, forced to hold in her own screams of pain. And then it all breaks loose in pandemonium, just as brutal as we could have ever hoped to imagine. Disturbing, gory, and disgusting. But the part you remember isn't the mauling. The part that sticks with you isn't the attacking bear itself. It's not the aggression. It's those words, that growl, that feeling of complete powerlessness as the bear prowls through the house, able to strike at any moment. That's fear. That is scary. Happy Halloween.